Join me in taking the 7-day food challenge. Sherry Strong offers a food challenge where she teaches you with videos and PDFs and recipes and video recipes how to eliminate food and diet confusion. Sherry Strong's a nutritionist that has been teaching people around the world how to stop the dieting so you can eat whole foods, delicious foods, amazing recipes that are easy and super delicious and packed full of nutrition. So if you want to get more energy, find balance, eliminate brain fog and food hangovers, lose weight, detox, cleanse naturally, get better sleep, and wake up with more energy, then take the food challenge. Visit learntruehealth.com/challenge. That's learntruehealth.com/challenge and take the challenge with me. Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is episode 38.
Eating as we're eating on this planet, because our way of thinking of food became so messed up. It became fear-based. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough money. It was all about what we, we're afraid I'm not getting enough nutrients. And it really stemmed a lot of it out of the nutritional marketing and the diet mentality. Einstein said you cannot solve a problem with the same consciousness that created the problem. So there's no such thing as a diet or some kind of laboratory, scientific, genetically modified food that's going to solve the problem that's creating it in the first place. We really need to change and shift our consciousness back to a way that really helps us understand how our food choices will impact not just how we feel today, how we feel tomorrow, but generations from now.
Our next guest, she's a bit of a celebrity. Sherry Strong is a nutritionist, she's an author, a food philosopher, and she has been teaching people for many years around the world how to strip away all that food confusion and eat so it's so healthy for you that you won't feel starved or, feel like you're missing out, and yet you're going to be eating whole foods, really delicious foods. And she teaches a way of eating that the whole family enjoys. She really focuses on family and togetherness. And so friends and family can come together and eat meals that are healthy and that don't make you feel restricted. I absolutely love her program. In fact, after I interviewed her, she invited me to take her 7-day challenge, and it was amazing. She has this whole video course where every day for 7 days you're given all these videos and video recipes, and because she's a chef, it's easy to learn from her. It's sort of like the Food Network for people who want to eat really healthy, delicious foods. She even has some great chocolate recipes for those who want to eat healthy but still need our chocolate. I loved her program. And it was so great that I aligned myself with her. So if you want to take the 7-day challenge course that Sherry Strong offers after listening to this interview, which I know you will because I was so jazzed up I had to, then please visit learntruehealth.com/challenge. And you will be able to sign up for a course, and it just amazing. I cannot say enough good things about it. I learned so much from Sherry, and even though I already eat healthy, I was able to implement a lot of really fun recipes that my whole family enjoyed and my friends enjoyed. And I just love that it was easy to learn how to cook these great foods, making it, in our busy days when we want to reach for a packaged food, a pre-made food. We know that's not always the best or healthiest thing to do, but hey, we're living really busy lives. And what I love about what Sherry teaches is she teaches a way that we can eat nutritiously and not have to run to the packaged foods, because she teaches you a way to do it that is going to make it easy to implement into your life. For those who are healthcare workers or someone who's in the healthcare industry, Sherry also has a program for teaching those who want to learn how to do this so they can teach others, which is really exciting. So she actually focuses on not only teaching families and individuals on how to become healthier through diet and lifestyle changes, but she also focuses on how to train nutritionists and how to train other healthcare workers to be able to help others get rid of that food confusion. One thing she talked about in the interview was how when she trains nutritionists, she finds that nutritionists have more food confusion than we do. And that's because there's so much information out there. So she's really boiled it down and she's figured some amazing key points out that has helped so many people gain their health back. I'm really excited for what she has to share with you today. Her TEDx talk was so amazing. I'm going to link the link to her TEDx talk in the show notes of this podcast, along with all the other links to what Sherry does. So check out the show notes of this podcast and enjoy this interview. Well, I'm actually a really big fan of yours, Sherry. I'm so excited you're on the show today. I saw your TEDx video that you did, and it really blew me away. I was just like jumping off of my seat the entire video because it's exactly my same experience. What you talk about when it comes to food and what's going on in the world globally with obesity, with our diet, with the lack of connection and emotional satisfaction, and then all of the chemicals that are happening in food, and the fact that you had a loaf of bread that you showed on stage that it was 5 years old and did not mold or dry out is really scary because we're feeding these neurotoxins and these pesticides to our children, and globally we are becoming less and less healthy. So you're here to turn that around for us. And I was really excited to read that you're not only helping the public, the general public, through education, but you also are training people, those who are either health coaches already, to become even better food health coaches. And my understanding is you also have programs for training people to become food coaches.
Absolutely. That's my mission in life right now. It's like everything I've done to this point, and I've done some amazing things. I'm here to train at least 10,000 food coaches globally to be super efficient and make at least $70,000 a year as a food coach, helping people develop a healthier relationship with food, their body, and the planet. That is my mission.
I love that because you can use money as a measurement for how many families they're helping.
Well, definitely a measurement for how many families are helping, and I really base that figure on the national kind of information and research that's done around happiness, and that they're showing that people who make $70,000 a year, so it means they have enough to make ends meet, right? And they have enough to, have a bit of the cushion things, maybe a holiday, all those kinds of things, and they're not struggling, and providing they're living within their means. There's no difference between their happiness and that of a billionaire. And so I thought, well, if I can show them how I've done this, and that, to me, that I'm not promising any kind of get rich quick scheme. It's, there's work involved in it, but you can actually get to that level where you're making an income, working from home, doing something you absolutely love that gives you a sense of purpose and meaning and makes the world a better place. And you can have an income that puts you on par with someone who's making $1 billion.
And also have the emotional satisfaction of knowing how many people you're helping.
Absolutely. Every day you wake up inspired.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I know that me personally, in my past, I was a sales manager, I was in retail, I did all those kind of things, and I did not feel like I was making a difference in people's lives.
Yeah.
And then when I started to research about how to get my health back, and through that, the second I started learning and then started applying it to my life, I started getting my health back. I wanted to just scream it from the rooftops, and everyone I came within 5 feet of, I wanted to tell. And so it became naturally, I transitioned into wanting to be in the business of helping people get their health back.
Yes.
So I bet that there's a lot of listeners who are resonating with that and would love to learn how to help people become healthier, and also work from home, because then that gives them the freedom. So like stay-at-home moms could do this, or
Absolutely.
Dads who want to be stay-at-home dads could do this.
Absolutely.
Wow. So what does it take to be a food coach?
Well, number one, it takes that passion to want to help people. You kind of, have to have that nurturing aspect to you. But, there's all types of people who are doing this. It's more the belief system. It's basically, you got on the call and everything you're saying, I'm like, you are such a perfect return to food coach. So it's people who believe, you know, that we're in trouble as a planet with the food, that that maybe they've had their own transformational story, whether that's a weight loss story or healing a sickness story, or, you know, getting their mental capacity back, or, you know, anything where they've seen the transformational power that eating a, you know, a whole food, natural, plant, you know, centric diet can actually, how that can just totally turn your life around, and that they're passionate about that. And so I have people who are food coaches who take the course because they feel it's going to help them in their entrepreneurial role. They're not necessarily wanting to be a return to food coach, but they know that the information and how I'm teaching them to build a business and get good at speaking professionally on and off camera, you know, and learning the food side of things actually helps their entrepreneurial endeavor. To people who want to be a food coach, that's all they want to do. And then there's people who are like, they just want to be the food coach in their family. They want to have this information. And in particular, I know you know what this is like when you become an absolute vacuum for everything about health and well-being. So now your head is totally stuffed with information, and you may even be experiencing a sense of nutritional confusion, or at the very least overwhelm of how do I actually, you know, tell people this without, one, scaring them off or just overwhelming them into inaction. But there are people who want to have the ability to help their family see this, but in a way that doesn't come up against resistance or puts them off or making them feel judged and things like that. So the methodology, the philosophies that I've developed, and the concepts of how to explain it, it just becomes inescapable, that it just makes so much sense. And you can't argue with them because they're based on wisdom and how the most successful cultures on the planet, who have not just survived but thrived, have developed this healthy relationship with food, their body, and the planet. And we're just so separated from that that sometimes when we go to talk to people, our enthusiasm can actually put them off.
I have had that experience. My
Absolutely.
husband and I went gluten-free about 5 years ago, so we do not eat barley, wheat, rye, or oats. And we had, within 7 days, such incredible health changes. I lost just about 25 pounds in the first month of being gluten free, and it was not a fat loss; it was inflammation and
Right.
water retention from the inflammation. And I can look at pictures of myself before going gluten free and after, and you can just see my face is round and poofy. And then after going gluten free, you can see a noticeable shift in the color of my skin. And so even just cutting out that, cut out a lot of other additives, because then instead of eating all of the unhealthy, quote unquote gluten free foods, packaged foods, we just shopped the perimeter of the grocery store and got on a more whole food diet.
Yeah.
And then when we started to feel better, we wanted to get all of our friends and family on it. And we came up against a lot of resistance. I did, however, have a handful of friends that joined me, and one in particular who's Jewish and loved bagels. I remember her about a month later texting me going, "Damn you, I can never eat bagels again." Because she had gone gluten free and then went back and ate a bagel, and felt so horrible just from going back to eating the old foods, that she realized just how healthy she'd become from cutting them out.
Yeah. And what you also learn very quickly is how not just toxic these foods are, but how addictive they are. And one of the biggest things people don't understand when they go into food coaching and nutrition, particularly if their journey of health has not been around the whole addictive piece, although everyone can relate to it because all those foods are highly addictive, is that that's a big part of the work of becoming a return to food coach, is helping people understand that what they're giving up are highly addictive foods that people have very emotional, strong emotional attachments to. And so when you're saying, give this up because it's unhealthy and eat this way because it's healthy, it's like, when I had my cooking school in Strathcona, which is in the east side of Vancouver, and when I first started it, there were people doing drug deals right out in front of the kitchen. That changed, actually. The energy changed in the neighborhood after we were cooking some organic whole food for a while. But I was saying to my students, telling your addicted friends and family, to just eat this because it's healthy and you don't want that because it's unhealthy, is like me going up to one of the drug dealers or their clients and saying, here, have an apple. It's going to make you feel so much better instead of the drugs that you're taking. It's not that simple, right?
Right. Well, I actually also had a personal experience of this. My husband and I, just over 2 months ago, went sugar free, 100% sugar free, and grain free. So now we're eating even more whole food. It's like we're stripping away at the bad habits, one bad habit at a time, and
Wow.
focusing on more and more healthy food. So we're eating lots of healthy fats, healthy proteins, and lots of veggies. And of course, it's all organic. So I lost in the last 2 months, or just over 2 months, 20 pounds. My husband's lost something like 24. But we're doing it not as like, how you say it's the anti-diet, or it's not a, I'm not
Mm,
looking for diet. I'm looking for, let's get to the healthiest nutrition.
yeah.
And I cannot believe how much sugar is in everything. Like, even
Mm,
when I was looking for a hot sauce, because I really don't feel like making my own hot sauce from scratch. I'm not a chef. And every hot sauce had sugar in it. I just couldn't
yeah.
believe it. It took me a long time to find one brand in a super health food store that didn't have sugar in it. So something as simple as condiments all have sugar. Of course, most cereals and supposed health foods, it'll say agave or honey, but
Mm,
that's still sugar.
yeah.
Not that sugar's bad, but it's I could not believe how much sugar I was consuming before I became aware, before it entered my awareness.
Yes, and you'd already been on a health journey, right? So
Mm-hmm.
where you are is really impressive, but it's something that very few people could do overnight or a week or even in a month. This is taking you years to kind of get to this point,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's the smartest and wisest thing to do. And yeah, it's just yeah, I just wanted to kind of applaud you for that
Oh, well, thank you.
and acknowledge it
It's
because
not
it's smart.
it's not easy, but
No.
on your TEDx talk, you sort of opened up about, hey, how much energy did you have this morning? And my life, so I was habituated to it. My life before this health journey 5 years ago, I could not wake up in the morning. I had really bad case of chronic adrenal fatigue. I needed several cups of coffee with laden with so much sugar that there was like a syrup at the bottom of my mug, and just to feel human,
Yeah.
and then to get through the day. And then I had to always, around 3 p.m. Get more sugar just
Yeah.
to kind of keep going. And I was using sugar and caffeine as drugs to
Hmm.
keep me awake, and I had no energy whatsoever. And then when we went gluten free, my and got on healthy supplements, and started focusing on, well, what foods are we putting, what fuel's going in the body. I started to get my energy back. But even in the last 4 years that I've been, eating as healthy as possible, I still had sugar and, desserts, even if they were organic, gluten free, dairy free, there was still a lot of sugar and I didn't realize it. So in the last 2 months of stripping the sugar away and eating more whole foods,
Hmm.
I have had more energy now than I ever have had in my entire life. And that includes my childhood. I wake up and I think clearly. I have so much energy.
Yeah.
So I related to exactly what you said in the TEDx talk. I wouldn't have been able to relate to that a few years ago, but I do now, and I just can't believe that there was an even better. Like, I felt good a year ago, but I feel even better now.
Yeah.
So you can take people, and it's like take them down the rabbit hole. And so is a health coach, or sorry, a food coach, a return to food coach, someone who can take someone wherever they are, wherever their family is, and help the family get to a place where they can feel even better, no matter where they are within their health.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And you're taught not just how to, deal with families, but single people. You also are taught about your own holistic hero's journey. So that which goes on, internally with you, and how you have times where you ebb and flow, and how do you handle where when you're not being perfect. How do you then lead people, coach people when you have, this cognitive dissonance, for lack of a better
Hmm.
phrasing around it, where how can you still lead people, can you still go through this when you're still developing your own relationship with food? Because like I applaud you for what you're doing, and I've certainly had moments in like that in my life like that, but I'm by no means a perfect eater. The thing what I really want to advocate to people is I think if you can get to the place where you are, awesome. But always just be on the path
Mm-hmm.
and doing your very best. I don't want anyone out there to think that I'm biased, this paragon of virtues and someone who's living absolutely perfectly. In fact, I went out for dinner last night. I was invited out for dinner, and I had a glass of wine and I had dessert, and I woke up literally with a serious hangover. I slept 2 hours more than I normally would sleep just because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm still, I'm not living a perfect life, and I'm not even, it's not really what I'm aspiring to, but I would love everyone to feel the contrast that
Mm-hmm.
you're experiencing, because at least you get a taste of it and you know that every deviation, it's not some kind of, that I'm getting a bug or virus.
Mm-hmm.
I literally have had a food hangover, and you know,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes. That was my life every morning. I
right.
felt like 7, 8 years ago. Every morning, I described my life as waking up feeling like I had a bottle of tequila the night before and got hit by a Mack truck. I
Yeah.
mean, I felt that hangover every morning.
Oh
But
boy.
so Dr. Megan Saunders is a naturopathic physician, has been on the show before, and she says, I would rather help my patient know what foods are causing that.
Yes.
So rather than them never eating them again, I want them to understand what foods they're allergic to, what foods are sensitive to, what foods will give them that hangover in the morning, what foods will cause other symptoms like indigestion, they know. So hey, if
Yes.
they want to go drink that glass of milk, even though if they know it's going to give them heartburn, at least then they know, hey, I'm going to
Yes.
have heartburn. I know the consequences. But 8 years ago, I had no idea why I was chronically sick and why I was chronically exhausted. And so now it's like, yeah, if I had that glass of wine and a piece of chocolate cake, I'd be right there with you in the morning feeling sick, but at least I didn't wouldn't have the stress of not knowing why I'm sick.
Yes, and I think a big part of depression, there's literally millions of people who are not depressed because of their lives or their thinking. They're actually depressed because the foods they're eating are depressing their physiology, and that can actually lead to negative thinking, or not really being grateful or appreciating their lives. And when I have a night like last night, and look, I had one glass of wine. I shared a dessert. I didn't even have my own, but I know that the next morning my energy is going to be quite different and quite low. And I have a huge weekend coming up. I've got, speaking engagements and, booze that I have to man and that kind of thing for Return to Food. And I made a critical decision last night to have a glass of wine, knowing that that's going to impact me for the weekend. And not the brightest move, but I'm also human. I also believe that this incarnation of coming to the world, I came for the food. So I could never be a breatharian. I always think about, someone up in heaven going, "You were a breatharian down on earth?" And they're going, "Yeah." And like, don't you realize that's why most people go down there? It's for the food. So anyway,
Well, I
yeah.
know, I know that's why I'm here. I absolutely love food, and now it's become. I like the challenge of figuring out how to make healthy food delicious. So I've taken on that challenge. I've had a lot of I have experienced. This has been an ongoing thing in my life. My karma or my life's journey is to, I guess, resolve these lessons, learn these lessons around body shame,
Mm-hmm.
feeling guilty around food,
Mm-hmm.
and then also struggling with, I mean, I don't want to call it addiction, but it's that, like, oh, that's gonna make me happy, like, oh,
Yeah.
that ice cream, or for me it's like the coconut milk ice cream, that'll make me happy. And so in the moment it's like, is that my sugar addiction, is that an emotional, like, looking for an emotional fulfillment, or like we're out with friends and then it's the, if I don't have that dessert, I feel a sense of loss, or is this like, there's I just see, I've just become the observer.
Mm-hmm.
I step outside myself and observe the emotions that take place, and the unconscious programming that's kind of running in the background around food. And it's not, I mean, I wish food was as simple as filling up our gas tank for our car. And because there's no emotions around, oh, I'm on empty, let's fill up the tank. Well, I want to put the best gas in the car. Okay, let's go. But there's so much more happening around our food choices, especially like don't go to the grocery store hungry,
Yes.
because you will not be shopping the perimeter of the organic section.
Don't go depressed. Don't go feeling sad. Don't go feeling bad about your body. You know,
Mm,
it's not just hunger, right? It's really complex, but it's also a very interesting thing. We live in a time of privilege, unlike any other time on the planet, where food, even good food, has never been so easy to obtain. Even if you have to drive across town or 45 minutes to a farmer's market, it's still much easier than having to grow everything and obtaining everything from scratch yourself. And I kind of think of that analogy between food just being, fuel, as like sex just being for procreation. And I'm just like, well, that's a great reason to have sex, to have babies, but there's a lot more other great reasons too. And same with our food, is that it is complex, it is hard to figure out, but it's also a beautiful privilege, and there's so much joy that can come from it. It's not just the fuel and the macro micronutrients. It's the social context in which we eat is as powerful as what we're eating, and food can be such a conduit for pleasure and joy and conversation and connection and creation. Yeah, so I think it's really important to kind of look at it holistically.
well, exactly. And that's exactly why I have you on the show, because I want you to teach our listeners. So I think that my listeners are people who are know they're on their health journey,
Yeah.
obviously, and they're at different parts of the spectrum. So some who are haven't changed anything about their diet,
Mm-hmm.
and some have done a lot of altercations to their diet and anywhere in between. So you're speaking to a broad range of people who want to get their health back, and even if they take a few steps forward, because it is always a journey. So I'd love for you to share some of the lessons or philosophies that we can learn by reading your book, Return to Food, The Life-Changing Anti-Diet.
Well, I would love to tell you, and I just love interviewers who are not only interesting but interested. So this is a joy so far. I just want to let you know.
Oh, thanks.
So there's several philosophies, many that I teach, but there's kind of six primary ones, which is one is the lethal recipe. Then that leads into nature's principle. Nature's principle leads into the consumption concept. Consumption concept leads into the replace principle, which also leads into the pick your poisons. And the last is really about that social context and that we're meant to eat together. So the lethal recipe, very simply, I know we don't have a full day to go through all of this, so I'll try and be as succinct as possible without giving up too much detail that takes over our time. But the lethal recipe is the philosophy that's based on how we're producing our food really is a lethal recipe, in that it's leading to an exponential rise in lifestyle diseases that has not been seen at any other time, in humanity. And these are directly attributable to how we eat. And so the lethal recipe is based on showing people that how our food is processed and grown from seed to the table. Many things in the modern supermarket have been processed the same way we take opium sap and turn it into heroin, or coca leaves and turn it into cocaine. And so the primary ingredients of the lethal recipe are refined grains, sugars, oils, salts, and chemicals. But there's also dairy and soy. Anything can be turned into the lethal recipe by using this process of using heat to denature it, using toxic chemicals to break down the structure of it so you can remove the macro and micronutrients, or remove more of the micronutrients, and purify it to the point where you have something that in the processing becomes addictive and toxic to the body. And when you eat a volume of these foods, and particularly in combinations, you're eating a mass of food that's filling up your tummy. So you have this cue in your brain that's saying, I'm full, and yet you're not being nourished. So the body very quickly cues you again to say, feed me more, I'm not getting what I need. And so this leads to the cycle of addiction, obesity, disease. But I don't want to pick on just the obese folks out there, because I've been one. I don't like being picked on. So I have empathy for that. I've been twice my size. And what I realized is that there are people who are twice what they're meant to be, who have actually got that way because they're just eating too much real and whole food. And the composition of their body is going to be very different to someone who became obese from eating highly processed, toxic, addictive food. Saying that, either is not good for you, and it's not good for the planet. It's not sustainable to be eating that kind of volume of food. But what I always like to say to people is that when I had my practice as a nutritionist and that of, significant dietitians and nutritionists that I know, I would ask them a question: do you have just as many thin people with heart disease, diabetes, cancer, than you have obese people? And they're like, well, yeah. And I say, we need to stop just identifying obese people, because there are just as many skinny and thin people who are eating this toxic, addictive food. And in some respects, they can actually be more at risk because, as you know, the body creates fat cells to store excess toxins away from the vital organs. And so if you're super thin, you're eating a processed diet that has tons of chemicals in it, and you don't have fat cells to store it away from your vital organs, where does it go, right? So there's a whole kind of complex system around, about how we're eating and how addictive it is and how lethal it is. And we know now that refined sugar lights up the brain 8 times more than cocaine does. So we know that this is a highly addictive food. It's super cheap, it's available, and we've created a food system that makes the most processed food that's the hardest on the environment the cheapest available. And so people are eating volumes of it, and like I said, their body's not getting nourished, and so it's saying, feed me more. So that's kind of the lethal recipe that leads into people who are like, okay, well, how am I meant to know what to eat? And I came up with Nature's Principle because I was the Victorian chair of Nutrition Australia, and I would get clinical journals, Asia Pacific clinical journals of nutrition, and there would be very credible studies that were peer reviewed and looked solid, and I would get the next journal and they would have something that completely contradicted it. And I was like, well, if I'm in this position, this leadership position with Nutrition Australia, speaking at dietitians conferences, and I'm confused, how does the average everyday person handle nutritional confusion? And I would ask corporate audiences who experiences nutritional confusion, 40% of the hands would go up. Well, I would ask newly graduated nutritionists who experiences nutritional confusion, and 90% of the hands go up. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, so more information does not lead to clarity. And this is the problem that's happening now, is we have very credible voices all over the planet. We have billions of bits of information, thousands upon thousands of scientific studies. And what we're seeing now is people, and it's all kind of feels contradictory. And particularly when you get financial interests that use nutritional information for nutritional marketing, it becomes even more confusing. And so I thought, how do I actually clean up this clarity? And I would go out walking and I would ask, the universe, God, whatever. I'd just be like, how can I teach? How can I explain, and understand this in a way that I can help other people eliminate this nutritional confusion? And one day it just came as a download, and it was basically, I didn't articulate it this well initially, but this is what it was: Nature's Principle, because nature tells us what to eat and quantities to eat it in by how easily it's obtained in nature. So, or when it's obtained in nature, right? So that which was most abundant, we're meant to have the most of. And that's, air, water, vegetation. And in fact, when I first started teaching this, I would say to nutritionists, what's our most primary life-dependent nutrient? And when I would say air, they'd be like, well, that's not a nutrient. And
oh my gosh.
I would say, well, what's the definition of a nutrient? That which is required for growth. Try and grow something in your body without air. But the thing about Nature's Principle is there's this hierarchy. We don't have to wake up in the morning and find out where our air is. It's everywhere, right? And it's our most primary life-dependent nutrient. Water is our second most primary life-dependent nutrient. We can't survive days without it. And so it's 70% of the planet. Our bodies are 70% water, composite, as a composite, it's 70% water. So there's this interesting correlation that nature's starting to speak to us. And then if you start to look at what is the third most abundant source of nutrients, it's vegetation, right? And then we look at amongst vegetation, nature speaks to us and it tells us what we're meant to be eating more of by the fact that vegetables, there's more species of them. They're more available, year round. They grow quicker than fruit. So if you have given a choice between a broccoli seed to plant and you're hungry and an apple seed, you're going to plant the broccoli seed because you're going to get that within a matter of weeks, if not days, to get the sprouts, but you want that to grow into a plant. Whereas if you plant the apple seed, it's going to take years before you get fruit. And even then, if you have a fruit tree in season, you know, your broccoli will produce broccoli before the apples would be edible, because who's eating? You don't just pick a piece of fruit off the tree when it's unripened. And there's several reasons for that. And so nature's saying, eat lots of these veggies while you're waiting for this fruit to ripen, because when a piece of fruit is on a tree and it starts to ripen, that's when most of the nutrients are actually infused into the plant, into the actual fruit. And so when you wait for that sweetness to develop, it's nature's way of saying, you know, if you just wait a little bit longer, you're going to get more from this. And there's kind of this theme that happens in nature. And so that's kind of nature's principle. And if we go on into the consumption concept, the consumption concept is showing us that how we would eat in a natural environment based on nature's principle would mean that most of us, like 99.9% of us on the planet, would be eating differently of those who, you know, depend on supermarket, who aren't growing their own food, right? So when you're dependent on nature, you make very different decisions about what it is that you're eating. And there is a hierarchy into how we actually make our food choices. And so we can see that going back to nature's principle, that which is most abundant, we're meant to eat the most of. Harder to obtain, we require less of it. But nature gives us stronger physiological desires, so we work harder for it, and we work off the energy getting those foods that are harder to obtain in the process of actually procuring it. So that's why there's no obesity in nature, unless you have like a king or a queen who's being fed by many people who are supplying their food. You can't become obese, getting your own food, unless you have other people that are actually helping you to do this. And so the third part of nature's principle is, if you cannot get it in nature, not only do we not need it, it's harmful to the body and the planet. And we see the countries with the increasing lifestyle diseases, that's where they're increasingly eating out of. We're eating out of something that we can't get in nature. We don't need it. It's harmful to the body. It's harmful to the planet. And it's creating massive amounts of toxicity, sickness, landfill. It's just based on a philosophy that I also teach called what's good for the body is good for the planet, and what's good for the planet is good for the body. So if we go back to the consumption concept and we start to think, well, given the choice in nature, what would we actually choose? And we're often given choices. And I ask the question of audiences at times, I'll say, for what would you say the standard, person in North America, if they're given a choice between an omelet or chicken, would choose for dinner? What would you say?
Oh, well, I love chicken.
Yeah.
But I heard this on your TEDx talk, so I'm gonna let you tell the audience.
Okay. Well, we know by stats and the chicken consumption that most people would choose chicken, and there's been a lot of marketing, around that. So given the same choice in nature, we make very different decisions. So if I have to go out and catch, get some eggs to make an omelet, that's going to be way more efficient use of my time. And remember, nature tells us what to eat in the quantities by how easily it's obtained in nature, because our way of being as a species is set up for convenience. Works great in nature, not so good in the supermarket. So given the same choice between getting that egg or catching, killing, plucking, disemboweling, bleeding, and preparing a chicken, most people become vegetarian. But even the hardest, and the keenest of carnivores would think twice about killing a chicken with all that effort involved, when they know that they're also killing off a source of, eggs and protein for a long period of time. And then I also talk about the hierarchy of how we'd actually eat. And I actually shared this last night at dinner. I was basically saying, if you're given a choice in nature between killing a fish or a chicken, and I apologize to the vegans out there, but it's a reality in the world we live in, most people would choose to kill the fish. And I often say that we will choose to kill that which is least like us. So given a choice between chicken and fish, most people would kill the fish. And we know that fish is much easier for the body to break down than chicken, the human body. And then if you're given a choice between chicken and lamb, what do you think most people would find easier to kill?
Probably the chicken.
Absolutely, right? It's also less like us. And of course, it's a smaller beast to actually deal with. And you don't have to look into the beautiful eyes of the lamb, right? And I was giving this talk in Australia where, I lived for 22 years. And this one guy in the audience says, I don't mind killing a lamb. And I was like, oh, okay. And I kind of backed up and, standing in the audience and kind of, The audience laughed with it, and he said, "Oh, I'm fourth generation lamb farmer, and I grew up killing them and all that kind of stuff." In my Australian accent, I apologize
No, it
for
was
it.
great.
Uh, yeah, it's great because you're not Australian.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So anyway, I said to him, I said, "Do you remember the first time you killed a lamb?" And it was fascinating because his whole physiology changed from this cocky Australian, standing up in the street, making everyone laugh. He actually slumped into his chair, and his head went down, and he went, "Yeah," and he actually nodded. "Yeah, I do remember." Complete
Mm.
physiology change. And I said, "Did you have to shut off something that was human within you in order to do it?" And he said, "Yeah." So we have become, a species that is comfortable killing. A portion of our species are comfortable killing, but it's not natural to us. And I have a friend who's a hunter, and I believe that if you are going to consume meat, it's the most honest way to do it. And he said, he was giving all the reasons why, justifying being a hunter. And I really wasn't coming from a place of judgment. It was just the conversation and, reasoning. And he said, we've got our eyes, are situated like predators. And that means, we're meant to go kill them. And I said, well, in nature, a predator is quite comfortable lunging at an animal and killing it, with its teeth and biting into the flesh and eating it. I said, "Are you comfortable with that? Is that natural to you?" So, and he's like, "Oh, no, that's definitely not natural to me." So, as humans, we have the ability to justify anything. And that's why when I teach the philosophies, I'm never teaching it from a position of being self righteous or, making anyone feel bad, because in my lifetime, I've had the worst of eating habits, where I would wake up in the morning eating half a liter of Sara Lee ultra chocolate ice cream for breakfast, and I didn't stop eating, through the whole day. And I'm still an omnivore. I still, you know, wrestle with the whole meat eating thing and, animal protein eating thing and all that kind of thing. And I'm definitely plant centric, and that's what I teach people. And most of what I eat is plant centric. But our food choices are very complex, and the whole process, particularly with return to food, is about not judging people, taking people from where they are and guiding them to a place that's actually going to make them feel better, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And so the replace principle is one of the philosophies that we do to help people do that. And I believe in a slow transition to helping people make changes, because when you drastically change people's behavior overnight, it rarely leads to long-term sustainable change. Now, in the event of, chronic, terrible pain or the threat of death, absolutely necessary, totally understand that. But once that pain is gone or the threat of death is gone, and people haven't actually made that transition on a mental, emotional, and spiritual level, and it's just physical, they usually go back into the same behaviors that led to the problems in the first place, which is why the replace principle is so lovely, in that it helps people start to look at what they're eating one food at a time, to then start to replace it with the natural version, the natural option. And also you're changing consciousness, because we've really got into this problem eating as we're eating on this planet because our way of thinking of food became so messed up. It became fear-based. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough money. It was all about what we're afraid I'm not getting enough nutrients. And it really stemmed a lot of it out of the nutritional marketing and the diet mentality. And Einstein said, you cannot solve a problem with the same consciousness that created the problem. So there's no such thing as a diet or some kind of laboratory, scientific, genetically modified food that's going to solve the problem that's creating it in the first place. We really need to change and shift our consciousness back to a way that really helps us understand how our food choices will impact not just how we feel today, how we feel tomorrow, but generations from now.
I've struggled with weight my entire adult life. Um, I've been on over 30 diets. And I just was as you were talking, I was remembering Jenny Craig.
Yeah.
I did Jenny Craig, and I had great success. I lost 20, 25 pounds. And then I would hang out. This was back when I was in college, and then on the weekend I'd go hang out with my boyfriend. And you're right, I went right back to the old eating habits. There was no Jenny Craig, yeah, it's less calories and it's packaged foods. There's no relationship with the food. There's nothing was changed in terms of my strategies.
Mm-hmm.
And so the second I went out, and just did my old routine, of course, all the weight and more came back, because it was simply a crutch, the Jenny Craig system, which might work for some people, but for me, my observation was it didn't work because there was no change in my strategies and in my life, my lifestyle. And every diet I've been on has left me with more weight. I gained more weight back because it was a temporary fix. It's a band-aid. And you think about like the Nutrisystem diet or all those like different diets where you're buying some packaged food, and at the end of the day, you're having less of a relationship with the food. It's not nutritious. It's full of chemicals, and it's just calorie restrictive. So then your body abreacts, especially emotionally, once we feel like the emotions, like you said, with not enough time, not enough money, or feeling like a sense of loss, or like the survival mechanism kicks in where it's like, oh my gosh, I don't have enough, I don't have enough,
Yeah.
and then we're wanting to eat more and more. So your book, Return to Food, is this anti-diet where it's not about uh, okay, let's calorie restrict and get you to lose weight. It's about lifestyle shifts, one small shift at a time, so it's not this painful process. Because I know on emotional level it's very painful to go on a diet, because I have to go up against, so I imagine other people do too, you have to go up against all of these emotions that have piled on throughout the years.
Mm-hmm.
And so your book, as it's helping people make these slow shifts, is it also helping people get through the emotional aspect of their sort of food baggage?
Absolutely, because it really has to become about shifts in consciousness, and it really has to move towards love versus fear. Because diets really, it's that thing, give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. Teach him how to fish, he'll fish for life. Diets give you a fish. Return to food, the anti-diet, teaches you how to fish. And even if you're vegan and you don't actually have literal fish, diets teach you how to diet. They don't teach you how to live. And it's always about restriction, and it's always about playing a game in your head. I saw Oprah recently um, I saw her interviewed, and she was talking about how she loved, she's now invested in Weight Watchers, and she loved the point system because it was like a little game. Well, again, it's like you can't fool your brain and your body, your consciousness into to be more enlightened. You can't fool yourself. You have to actually have a shift in consciousness to obtain a level of enlightenment where you have behavioral change over long term, right? And so with the return to food, we talk about hypernourishment, and hypernourishment helps you start to look at where in your life are you being malnourished, and where do you have toxicity, and that's mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. And physically last, because unless you start to work on the inner drivers, so the mental information that you're getting in, what are you watching on television, how is that impacting your physiology and how you're thinking, and start to look at people are out there and they're watching really toxic stuff, and we can't just watch a television show where there's brutality, and not be impacted on some level, and conversely, where can you actually maybe not just give up that show, but replace it with something else that's going to be way more powerful at building you up. And so hypernourishment is, where are you toxic, where are you malnourished, and where can we actually nourish you and hypernourish you in each of those areas. And then when we start to work on that with people, this brilliant thing happens, is that when you start to work on what's been below, what's internal, it shows up in the physical. So if you start to have input in your life, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, that's not only positive, but it's nourishing, and you start to eliminate the toxicity, and that can be in relationships, or it can be, in work, it can be lots of different things. And we start to nourish ourselves, and whether that's with, yoga, meditation, prayer, positive thinking, watching great inspirational YouTube videos, whatever it is, the shifts of making those choices in the physical world around your food become a lot easier because you're removing a lot of the cause of the anxiety and stress and low vibrational energy that's driving you to eat food that's also on a lower vibrational scale.
Two things. What I learned about myself while I've been taking the stance of the observer, stepping, like, like you said with Einstein, you got to shift your consciousness. So I've been stepping outside myself, observing what are these drivers, what are these unconscious, triggers. And what I was noticing was I would work myself so hard at work. I didn't schedule any time
Mm.
for fulfillment, for emotional connection, for fun, for hobby, because I
Mm-hmm.
thought, I'm an entrepreneur, so
Mm.
hobby is like a waste of money. It's a waste of time, right? Or having fun is a waste of time because I want to work, work, work. So work 7 days a week, and then I would look to food
Mm-hmm.
for that emotional satisfaction, that fun. Like, oh, at the end of the day, I feel so incomplete because I haven't had enough fun time,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'd fill it with food.
Absolutely.
And then if I was at dinner, for example, like a dinner party, and there was, the waiter comes up, would anyone like a dessert menu? I'd shoot up my hand because, well, this is fun. Now I get to have fun. And if I was on a diet at the time, I would have this anger inside, or this, like, conflict, of feeling like I was a kid who had their toy taken away.
Yeah.
Like even though it's me punishing myself, it's this,
Mm-hmm.
feeling like I'm being sent to the corner of the room, and then I would want to act out. And so then it was like this rebellion within me. And then, like you said, with Oprah and the point system, if it's a game, if a diet is a game, then you can cheat or you can
Yes.
find loopholes. And so I know I did Weight Watchers like 5 times. And within a week, it was like, okay, so if I had this much fiber and if I go for a 20-minute walk and I'm going to use up those extra points and I'm going to eat this chocolate cake and, yes, again, it's calorie restrictive and uh, Weight Watchers has some good aspects. I applaud them for having weekly meetings and they're looking at creating a support system. But at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the day, for me, it allows you to still eat the chocolate cake.
Yeah.
It allows you to still eat
Yeah.
really unhealthy foods, maybe just less of it or less time. But at anytime I started a diet, there was always like this, okay, I'm going to lose 10 pounds a month until I get to my goal weight and then I can eat whatever I want. And so it was like this marathon in my head where there's this finish line and then I'd be
Yes.
done. And
Yes.
there was no relationship with nourishing my body on a daily basis. And there was just so much guilt and shame built up every time I started a diet. So I love that what you're doing is you're helping people create this holistic relationship with their body, with their energy levels, with their food. That's really, really exciting. When I was pregnant, I had gestational diabetes, and I was really upset about that because I thought I was eating super healthy. Probably I should have avoided the coconut milk ice cream. That that was like my addiction. It was amazing how addicted I was to that sugar, and so my doctor wanted me to see a specific type of dietitian that helped with people with women with gestational diabetes. And I sat down and I told her, okay, listen, I just want to let you know I'm gluten free, I'm dairy free, I eat whole foods as much as I can, and I'm organic. And she proceeded to pull out her pamphlet and show me what kinds of food I could eat. And she started advising me on the how I could eat at McDonald's and what things on the McDonald's menu I could choose.
Oh,
Like it was the talk about the nutrition confusion. And then when I showed her my food diary, she said, no, 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 you're not eating enough sugar. I can't believe you're only eating, this much. And I said, but I have gestational
oh my
diabetes. What are
God.
you talking about? I thought I was supposed to eat, lower carb and eat more, uh, uh, fiber rich vegetables. And she said, no, 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 I want you eating 80 grams of carbohydrates a day. And I was down to like 30. And so that her as a nutritionist working in a hospital with pregnant women, her belief was gestational diabetics needed this amount of carbohydrates, needed more. And I just walked out of there going, I mean, I have read numerous diet books. I've talked to tons of, naturopathic physicians. I'm pretty sure I know what I'm doing, but this, expert over here is telling me something else. So there was a lot of confusion, and there's with these professionals, and I wish they would all go take your course.
Well, I'll tell you, I remember my first encounter. I'm speaking at a diabetes conference in Australia, and I looked around and I was like, they're indoctrinated, one, through the university, because universities are funded by, industry.
They're
And so,
funded by pharmaceutical companies, and they have been for 150 years.
and the food industry.
Mm.
So there's definitely biases there. When I was studying at university, I was like, well, the lecturer is talking about dairy, and all her notes are supplied by the dairy corporation. I'm like, how unbiased is that? And then I go to the dietitians conference, and the latest research on grains was sponsored by Kellogg's, and the person speaking about the health benefits of wine was sponsored by the wine industry. And I'm just like, am I the only one who can see what's going on here? Because this is like nuts. I had a client one time come to me in Australia. He was the CEO of a major company. He was quite overweight and was diagnosed with obesity. And one of the professors at Melbourne University said, "I think you should go and see this person." And so he came to me and he showed me the tear-off sheet that he got from the doctor to help with his diabetes. And he showed me the insulin that he had. And I'm looking at this tear-off sheet and I'm looking at everything. And I take my marker and I'm scratching out the things that he definitely should not be eating. And like, we got to the end of the page and almost everything was scratched out. And I said, and my brain was kind of, spinning. And I'm thinking as I'm saying it out loud. I said, Andrew, this is really weird. This diet looks like it's designed to keep you on insulin. There's nothing in here that's going to heal your pancreas. It's going to keep your blood sugar so it's not going off the charts, but you're still going to be dependent on insulin.
Bingo.
And literally, as I'm saying it, I look down to the bottom of the tear-off sheet, and the pharmaceutical company that's prescribed the insulin has created the tear-off sheet. Yeah. So no wonder people are kind of, lost and confused, and we've been taught, we've been indoctrinated to, really respect and trust doctors. And there are great doctors out there, don't get me wrong, but they are very much the minority, and they're people who have to buck the system and go against the system that's really set up, to support the pharmaceutical and the food industry.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
Yeah.
there is so much misinformation out there. I am so happy that you are on the mission that you're on, helping us to we're putting on our like our those like beer goggles you can put on where all of a sudden you see the world while everyone's drunk. Well, this is like the truth goggles. We're gonna put on the truth goggles, and we're gonna see the world the way it is. And we need to. So there's something called the trivium. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. It's a 2,500-year-old way of critically thinking that they systematically took
Ah,
out of the education system about
yes,
150 years ago when they brought in the
yes,
Prussian education system. The
yes,
trivium is essentially a way of learning how to critically think, and you can
yes,
teach it to kids, but once you learn how to critically think, you become a BS detector. And
yes.
so you are thinking with the trivium. You're looking at the data, you're analyzing the data, and then you're coming to the conclusions. Whereas scientists these days will come up with a hypothesis and then look for the information to prove their hypothesis, which is completely backwards.
Yes, but it also gets them funding.
Well, exactly. So we need to start to look at those tear off sheets that our doctors have given us and look at the bottom and see, hey, has this been funded by the pharmaceutical company that wants to keep us on this drug? That type of thinking, or look at the back of the package. I mean, the other day I was grocery shopping and I was looking at a package, and it supposedly was healthy, and there was monosodium glutamate in it, and I could
Uh,
not believe it.
yeah.
And I normally shop at a grocery store that does that. Actually, there are grocery stores out there that like Whole Foods, or in my area it's called PCC. And these grocery stores will have a list of foods they do not allow in the store, like MSG and nitrates, nitrites, and certain, red dyes and stuff like that. So I know it's somewhat safe to shop there, but become a food detective. And that's the first lesson I learned when I first started on this health journey 5 years ago. When I first went gluten free, I had to become a food detective.
Mm-hmm.
Take the time to read every ingredient. If you are going to go within the aisles of the grocery store, or even when you're shopping organic, figure out what farm it came from,
Mm-hmm.
because some supposedly quote unquote organic foods are not actually grown organically. I know that there was a grocery store that was under scrutiny a few years ago because they were selling supposedly organic broccoli, which it turned out was grown in China and was not grown
Oh
organically.
my goodness.
So yeah, so this is this, and I sort of felt helpless at that point because how much time I don't have time to spend to do all this research. But then I thought, okay, if I just take one step at a time, get to know the grocer, figure out, like you say, go to farmers markets, figure
Yes.
out the farms that the things come from,
Yes.
especially if you find grocery stores that are not big box chains but like smaller co-ops, or you can even get a lot of communities have farms that get together and you can actually buy a delivery box from them.
Mm-hmm.
So you're getting,
CSA.
sorry.
CSA.
Yes, exactly. A CSA. So find a local CSA. It's actually more affordable and it's local and it's organic. And I love in your talk, in your TEDx talk, you talked about the slow diet. And I'm going to borrow that from you because I absolutely love that you say slow is seasonal, local, organic, and whole. And
Yes.
so, even if we just start to eat the slow diet, we're
Yeah.
going to be doing some great things. But before we wrap things up, I'd love you to just share a little bit about. So, maybe not everyone wants to become a food coach, although it'd be really
Yes.
cool for all of us to become return to food coaches, just for our friends and our family. But for those who just want to help their immediate family or help themselves, you have a 7-day challenge that they can sign up. Visit learntruehealth.com/challenge. Tell us a bit about what we would get out of doing your 7-day food challenge.
Wow, that's very kind of you to mention that. It's so funny. I got so engrossed in the conversation, completely forgot about it. But it's really what you just said is when you start to get on this path and you become a detective, it can be overwhelming. You can literally consume hundreds of hours, and literally spend thousands of dollars on food products because you're experimenting, you're a detective, and you're figuring it out. And that's great if you have the time and money. But the 7-day challenge is really for those people who would love to kind of cut through all that nutritional confusion. And I take in 7 days, you've got videos, audios, and PDFs that take you through the process of understanding the lethal recipe, understanding the philosophies I talked about, like nature's principle, lethal recipe, consumption concept, replace principle, pick your poisons, and we're meant to eat together. And then that's delivered in content that you can download. There's a Facebook group where you can actually share recipes and talk about, what you're going through in the challenge. And it happens the first Monday of each month. So you have lifetime access to the information and the community. And it's really about going through the process of changing that shift in consciousness, getting the right amount of information. You may not get it all done in 7 days, but you have access to go back to it at any time. And you can come back each month and get reinvigorated to become, keep on the path. Because there's an expression, you teach what you most need to learn. And one of the things that I believe that by either becoming a teacher or, becoming part of community is you get to that point of inculcation. And inculcation is a big part of changing behavior rather than just learning it once.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Sherry, for being on the show. Um, Before we end it, could you challenge the listeners? Give us something that we can do now and for the next 7 days to improve our health.
Well, it's probably not what you would expect, and it's the last philosophy I didn't really share is about we're meant to eat together. It's based on the French proverb of where love sets the table, food tastes its best. And my challenge would be to you to start to look at what you're eating and ask yourself, was this produced out of love or is it produced out of fear? Am I making this food choice because I'm loving my body, or I'm making this choice because I'm afraid that I don't have enough time, I'm not getting enough nutrients, or that, I'm eating to fill some kind of void because emotionally I'm not getting my needs met? Just start to ask yourself, because it's in the asking of the questions. And when you start to get a lot of no's, that no, this isn't actually born out of love, that the people who are creating this food are doing it purely for money, or the workers aren't getting paid more. Energetically, everything that we're actually eating, it carries forth into how it actually makes our body feel. And when you can make more choices based on feeling love for the planet and love for your body, you start to build up these reserves internally, and also, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So it's actually my best nutrition tip is just to start to ask yourself, did this come from a farmer who loves farming, or did this come from a factory farm where there's, chemicals used, and tractors and trailers, and people or farm workers are being exposed to, chemicals to work with. When you start to make those choices from that place, you're no longer making a choice based on fear. You're not based on scarcity. And that beautiful expression where love sets the table is really born out of the social context in which we eat is as powerful as what we're eating. And I often say I'd much rather have a greasy bowl of noodles with people who are kind, positive, and loving than to have the most gourmet, nutritiously prepared meal with people who are angry, depressed, and negative. Saying that, what I believe is incredibly powerful is to have something that nourishes, energizes, protects your body, tastes delicious, and share it with people who you love and care for and respect, and who love you and respect food and the planet, and have generous, loving conversations, and building up, our self-esteem at the table. There's Shauna Core, researcher, happiness researcher, is showing that a child who is sitting at the table and consistently at the dinner table is given the opportunity to share 3 things that they're grateful for. You can take a child who's genetically, physiologically predisposed to depression and turn them into a lifelong optimist. And the dinner table, when we set it with love, has the power literally to not just transform us and our families, but the world.
Oh, that is so beautiful. And in your TEDx talk, you mentioned one thing. You said, sit at the table with someone who can make jokes not at people. Being able to joke with a friend or friends or family members, not at the expense of others.
Yeah.
And that is it's so beautiful. So looking at our food and the entire chain of custody, making sure that there's love involved in the entire chain of custody, from its growth to it's on your plate.
Right.
Excellent. Well, there's someone at your door.
I know. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Thank you so much for being on the show, Sherry Strong. Visit learntruehealth.com/challenge and get on that 7-day challenge. I know I'm going to do it. This is so much fun. I love learning, and I know I can definitely always learn more and more. So thank you so much. And I really want to have you back on the show because I think what you have to teach is so valuable.
It would be my honor and pleasure.
Thank you so much, Sherry.
Thank you, Ashley.
Take care. Join me in taking the 7-day food challenge. Sherry Strong offers a food challenge where she teaches you with videos and PDFs and recipes and video recipes how to eliminate food and diet confusion. Sherry Strong is a nutritionist that has been teaching people around the world how to stop the dieting so you can eat whole foods, delicious foods, amazing recipes that are easy and super delicious and packed full of nutrition. So if you want to get more energy, find balance, eliminate brain fog, end food hangovers, lose weight, detox, cleanse naturally, get better sleep, and wake up with more energy, then take the food challenge. Visit learntruehealth.com/challenge. That's learntruehealth.com/challenge and take the challenge with me.